In this constant push for peak performance, it seems like everyone is talking about brain health. And for good reason. It's created this massive global market for anything that can give us a cognitive edge. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the business behind one of the most promising molecules in that market. So get this. What if there was just one molecule that could both power and protect your brain? I'm talking about a single compound that helps keep your brain cells intact and boosts things like your memory and focus. Well, that's exactly the promise of the molecule at the center of this whole industry. Let's dig in and see what it's all about. All right, let's get right to it. The star of our show today is a molecule called citicoline. So what is this stuff, and why is it such a big deal for our brains? Okay, so in a nutshell, citicoline is something our bodies actually make on their own. It's a super important nutrient, and it has two main jobs. First, think of it like the repair crew for your brain cells. It's a building block for their membranes, basically the walls of your neurons. And second, it's the raw material for something called acetylcholine. Now that's a neurotransmitter that is absolutely critical for things like learning and memory. Pretty cool, right? And here's where it gets really clever. Take a look at its structure. It's made of two main parts, cytidine and choline. When you take citicoline, it does something amazing. It actually splits into those two pieces. They sneak across the blood-brain barrier one by one, and then, get this, they find each other again and reassemble inside your brain. It's like a Trojan horse for brain nutrients, an incredibly efficient delivery system. Okay, so we've got this awesome molecule, but how do we get it from a lab into a bottle on the shelf? Well, that all comes down to the manufacturing tech, and believe me, the industry has gone through a huge change here. Just look at the difference. On the left, that's the old school way, chemical synthesis. We're talking a complicated, messy process with a bunch of harsh chemicals. Not great. But on the right, that's the new standard, biosynthesis. This is way cooler. It uses things like enzymes or even tiny engineered microbes in a fermentation process to do all the hard work. The difference is honestly night and day in complexity, purity, and its impact on the planet. And this table really just spells it out. You can see why biosynthesis is the new king. I mean, look at this. The yield? Higher. The environmental impact? Way better. It's eco-friendly. The cost? Lower. And maybe most important of all, for something you're putting in your body, the purity. We're talking over 99% pure, without all the nasty byproducts you can get from the old chemical methods. It's a no-brainer, really. All right, so now we know what it is and how it's made. Let's talk money. Let's look at the numbers. Just how big is this citicoline market right now, in 2025? So, for 2025, the global market for citicoline is clocking in at more than $143 million. And to give you a sense of what that actually means, we're talking about a global production of over 713 tons of this stuff. That's a whole lot of brain-boosting power. But it hasn't exactly been a smooth, straight ride to get here. Back in 2020, this market was about $112 million. Then came a huge post-COVID boom that peaked in 2022. Since then, things have settled down a bit, a market correction, thanks to demand leveling off and more competition. But the future is looking really bright, with projections hitting over $183 million by 2030. So who is actually using all this citicoline? Well, the biggest piece of the pie, no surprise, goes to pharmaceuticals. It's used there for some pretty serious neurological conditions. But the one you really want to keep an eye on is health products. That's your everyday supplements. This category is absolutely exploding, and it's all driven by people looking for that daily cognitive boost. Now, when you look at who's making this stuff, it's pretty concentrated. There are a few big players who really dominate the scene. You've got Japan's Kyowa Hakko Bio at the top. They're famous for their premium brand. Then you've got some major manufacturers in China and Italy right behind them. In fact, if you take just those top three companies, they control more than half of all the citicoline produced in the world. And this sets up a really interesting dynamic on the world stage. You've got production happening mostly over in the Asia-Pacific region. We're talking mainly Japan and China. But where is it all going? The biggest customers are over in Europe and North America. So what you get is this very clear Asia to West flow for the entire global supply chain. Okay, so where is all this headed? Let's look into the crystal ball a bit and talk about the future, the trends, the challenges, and the big opportunities that are going to define this market on the way to 2030. This chart right here tells a really important story. It shows the central conflict in the market right now. See the blue line? That's the market value, and it's going up.
Great news, right? But look at the red line. That's the average price per ton, and it's going down. So what does that mean? It means more and more Citicoline is being sold, but the competition is so fierce that it's pushing prices down. And that puts a real squeeze on profits.
So, to really win in this market, you've got to play a balancing act. On one hand, the opportunities are massive. I mean, we've got an aging global population and just this explosion of interest in brain health. Those are powerful tailwinds. But on the other hand, the challenges are just as real. You've got those brutal price wars, a patchwork of different regulations, and you still have to convince some consumers who are skeptical about so-called smart drugs. But even with all that price pressure, the overall outlook is still really healthy. The market value is expected to grow at a solid 5% compound annual growth rate. And check this out. The amount of Citicoline being produced is growing even faster, at almost 6% a year. That's the real story here. It tells you that the fundamental demand for this stuff is just incredibly strong. Okay, so let's boil this all down. What are the big takeaways? First, Citicoline is a powerhouse molecule for brain health, now being made with clean, efficient biotech. Second, the market's growing like crazy, but that growth in value is being threatened by intense price competition. Third, remember that global trade flow. Asia makes it, the West buys it. And finally, the future is bright, thanks to powerful wellness trends and an aging population. And all of this leaves us with one big question to chew on. We know the demand for better brain health isn't going anywhere, but what will the future of this market look like? Will it be dominated by premium, science-backed brands? Or will the price wars win out, turning this amazing molecule into just another cheap commodity? The answer to that is going to shape the entire future of the brain health industry. Now, all the analysis we've walked through today comes from a report by HDIN Research. If you want to really dive deep into the data, you can get in touch with them directly. Thanks so much for joining us.